On today's show, Jamal Murray goes supernova to eliminate the Lakers with another game winner. The Thunder move past the Pelicans, and the Celtics have the Heat on the ropes. All of that and more on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Monday night. This is for Tuesday consumption. Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat filling in here with Gavin Shaw of Locked On Knicks filling in here. However you're tuning in, YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150. Win or lose, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Two teams eliminated from the playoffs on Monday night. One is on the brink, but let's start with the Nuggets, who eliminated the Lakers in 5 games. Jamal Murray coming up huge with 12 of his 32 points in the fourth quarter, including a dunk on LeBron James, his second game winner of the series. This one, a floater over Austin Reeves with 4 seconds left to put the Lakers away. Just an unreal performance from Jamal Murray, who was a game-time decision for this game. Gavin, I guess he was okay.
Yeah, he looked pretty good to me in what was a terrible game for Nikola Jokic, where he had 25 points, 20 rebounds, and 9 assists. 7 turnovers, though, so terrible game for Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray carries the load. You said it, 32 points, 7 assists. Despite that calf injury, his ability to attack the basket over and over again, known as a shooter, but has one of the best layup packages in the NBA. We all became familiar with it in the bubble. Showed it off early, the right-handed finish, left side over LeBron. Gets off on torturing Anthony Davis for some reason, like over and over again, getting him on a switch, hitting just crazy 1-foot baseline, 17-foot fall away shots. And then, of course, last play of the game, you knew it was going to happen. Pick and roll, him, Jokic, Austin Reeves almost gets to the ball, not quite there in time. Runner going left side, right-handed, didn't matter. And it was an epic conclusion to what was an epic game and a weirdly epic West 5-game series between these two teams. Didn't really feel like a first round series, barely even felt like a Western Conference Finals series. That felt like an NBA Finals game to me. Maybe it was just because LeBron was there, but the shot making down the stretch for both teams extraordinary. Denver had the ball back, and you just kind of had a feeling Jamal was going to end it.
Yeah, and it felt like in this game, as the Nuggets sort of realized that Jamal Murray looked okay, they started tilting the offense more in that direction. You mentioned it was like sort of half joking, Jokic having a bad game. It wasn't Nikola Jokic's best game in this series for sure, and they weren't able to run as much offense or to him, but they were running offense through him. There was a lot of pick and roll, especially as we got later in this game. I mean, Murray's final shot was off of Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic pick and roll, and it felt like they were starting to tilt the offense more in that direction. Another big Michael Porter Jr. game, who had an awesome series for Denver. But you look at Jamal Murray's numbers in this series. He had 32 points tonight, 22 points, 22 points, 20 points, 22 points, 2 game winners in this series, and the first one in game 2, the second one obviously in this game. And you mentioned how competitive this series was, Gavin, and that was sort of my same takeaway. I know that we kind of were joking about, hey, most competitive sweep ever in the West after the Western Conference Finals last year, but this was a competitive series. I thought that the Lakers, despite all of their problems and everything that's going on with them, and just, again, going up against the reigning champs in the Denver Nuggets, who have just been flatly dominant basically for 2 seasons now, I thought they really had some answers and threw some interesting haymakers at Denver. But it means something when it takes 2 game winners from Jamal Murray to move past him. And I know that there have been people talking about, okay, well, what does this mean for Denver? Are they the juggernaut that we expected? Is the West a little bit more open? I don't know. I just think the Lakers are a really interesting sort of foe for them because they have the best problem solver in the game in LeBron James. They have a center who can guard Jokic one-on-one as well as anybody can guard Jokic one-on-one with Anthony Davis. And then they've got like shot makers. Austin Reeves had a great game tonight. Other games it's been D'Angelo Russell. Other games it hasn't been D'Angelo Russell. Like, they've got guys where they're just sort of an interesting matchup in this one. So I don't know how much I take away from Denver in terms of them. Like I don't know what to expect. Like they beat the Lakers in 5 games. They beat them in 4 games last year. They were competitive games, but they still beat them in 5 games, even though it took 2 game winners. They did what they had to do. I'm not ready to say that I've got questions about Denver any more than I had any sort of questions about them going into the series. I still have them as the favorites in the West.
I'm in total agreement with you. I walked away from this series being more impressed with the Lakers than down on Denver.
Well said.
Point, it sounds ridiculous to say that after they beat LeBron James and Anthony Davis in 5 games, like that you could construe that as a negative. But to your point, the Lakers coming into this game 5, and I don't think they did much in game 5 to come off this because they led most of the game. They've led 80% of the minutes of the series, which is just ridiculous. And even tonight, if we buried the lead a little bit, Anthony Davis suffering, whatever that shoulder injury was, when it's 56-51, just a little bit into the third quarter, that totally changed the trajectory of the game. Much like game 4, the Lakers were torching the Nuggets on that LeBron, Anthony Davis pick and roll. There just really wasn't an answer. LeBron consistently able to bait 2 on the ball and just throwing these wild jump passes, contorting around Nuggets defenders, and over again, AD was finishing them. The Lakers had this rollicking pace early, and yet they were never really able to separate. But you just sort of felt like, which was shocking, because the story of this team, since they won an NBA title the last 4 years now, was they just don't have enough around AD and LeBron. And I'm not going to say that's wrong, because to your point, D'Lo is hyper inconsistent. Austin Reeves again was extraordinary down the stretch, but really quiet for the first 3 quarters. 3 big shots, like two mid-range jumpers, one like crazy contortion on the body, hit a 27-foot 3 to make it 102-101. Like he was exceptional. Rui Hachimura, probably his best game of the series, even though he didn't shoot great, did a great job attacking closeouts, spinning to the rim and finishing. And despite AD getting hurt, when that injury happened, it just sort of felt like the Nuggets were going to run away with it. They immediately ripped off something like a 10-2 run. AD was staying out there, couldn't lift his left arm over his shoulder. And I was like, all right, it's over. And he was, give Anthony Davis credit, because he's not really viewed as a tough player. He came back, he battled down the stretch, guarded Nikola Jokic exceptionally well. In the process, the Lakers had to burn their final timeout on that challenge, where AD actually played perfect defense on Jokic, at least from my vantage point. Maybe I missed something there. And then on the other side, you said it. I'll leave it to you, but MPJ just extraordinary shot making, extraordinarily efficient night, 26 points on 12 shots. It was Jamal's best game of the series, and they really only needed 3 guys, which is again a testament to how good those 3 guys are.
When you think about this series in the future and you think about the one play, is it going to be Jamal Murray's fading away corner 3-pointer in game 2? Is it going to be the dunk over LeBron James, or is it going to be the floater over Austin Reeves to win this one?
I think the game 2 shot, honestly.
I think I'm there too. That was the hard one. Maybe the dunk as a close second over LeBron. Credit to LeBron for coming over as the low man and even putting himself in that position. But if you had any concerns about Jamal Murray's leg, then I think that dunk probably erased it. And if that didn't do it, then maybe the 32 points did. And that's extremely important for Denver going forward, right? Because this matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves, you talk about the other team that gives the Nuggets at least trouble. It even seems like ridiculous to say trouble, considering what the record of this team has been and what they're putting together here. But the team that worries them is the Timberwolves, by their own admission. And so, and now you've got sort of Anthony Davis or Anthony Edwards having leveled up in that first round series. You got him versus, I guess, a healthy Jamal Murray is the takeaway from this one. So we'll see what goes on there. A little bit more on the Lakers. One more thing here, like, LeBron James looks exhausted at the end of this game. He plays 45 minutes in this one, and boy, did he have to play all 45 minutes of those. They probably could have used him for 48 minutes. I don't know what happens next. We have a whole offseason to talk about it for the Lakers, but like your 30-second take on what it is that the Lakers could do here.
It tells you about LeBron that his dominance in his prime didn't capture how much better he was than the rest of the league, because he so clearly lost so much from that. And yet in the biggest stage imaginable, 2 straight games now, he outplays the best player in the world. Maybe not by much. Some people might argue otherwise, but 30, 11, 4, shot over 50% from the field. And yet I think he knows in his heart of hearts, like, this team doesn't have enough. They can make an all-in move for someone like Trae Young. I don't think that changes the equation for them, because there's no depth here, and that's a series of bad moves after they did an exceptional job building off that 2020 championship team. And I don't think there's an easy way around that. So it's just what does he want at this point? And in my mind, based on everything he said, everything he's talked about, obviously goal number one would be to play with Bronny. I don't think that's going to happen this year. I don't think he's going to the NBA. I think he just wants to stay in LA. I think he wants to live in LA. I think he wants to be as competitive as possible. I don't see him chasing a championship. Do you disagree with that?
It would suck if he didn't. I kind of want to. I think he could still get to that level. I don't know that he could be the number. Like, he could be the number one guy in that he's LeBron James, and he'll be the number one guy in every room that he walks into for basically the rest of his life, the same way that Michael Jordan still is. But he's still at a level where he can compete. He's still at a level where he could push a team and be the thing that maybe take a final piece that takes the right team over the top, or if he can get the right players to him. And I'm watching. This is not a good Contavious Caldwell-Pope game. He didn't make a shot for the first 3 quarters, but he hits a 3-pointer at the end of this game, and his defense on LeBron was so good for most of this series. At least he was competing. You look at what Alex Caruso is doing. I'm just going to remember the Lakers' downfall as being that Russell Westbrook trade. I don't know that we even understand the full scope of how bad and how disastrous of a trade that was, and it may have cost LeBron a championship. It may have cost him a chance to go to that 2021 finals and everything that happened that year. And, you look at a game tonight and you're like, man, they could really use a guy like KCP. They could really use a guy like Alex Caruso. There's so many guys that they let go that would be perfect fits for this roster. And instead, you mentioned like a Trae Young deal. Is it just going to be chasing good money after bad over and over and over again? And is there a vicious circle there that they're unable to escape? Or is there something that they could do this offseason that maybe we can't necessarily see right now? But again, plenty of time for that in the offseason. The Nuggets move on. They'll face the Timberwolves in the next round in what is a very exciting series. But what do we make of the Celtics win over the Heat? We're going to move to the Eastern Conference next year on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by DoorDash. You want to make mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts from the brands she loves, delivered from the very same day with DoorDash. Does mom have a sweet tooth? Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she's into, you can make her smile with a fruit or flower bouquet, makeup, tech gear, workout wear, and more. Pair flowers with a gift card so she can celebrate any way she wants. Is she a bookworm? Try a bookstore gift card. Does she love a good latte? Get her a card to her favorite coffee shop. You can't go wrong. Get thoughtful gifts that she deserves with convenience that you need. Choose same-day delivery or schedule a week ahead for when flowers and gifts should arrive at her door with DoorDash. Shop with savings that would make her proud with a Dash Pass membership. You'll save with a $0 delivery fee and reduced service fees on eligible orders from Dash Pass merchants that meet the minimum subtotal. Other fees apply. Terms do apply. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now with the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's code LOCKEDONNBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Let's go to Miami, where the Heat lost to the Celtics 102-88. Another blowout where the Celtics basically led from start to finish. The Heat, Gavin, have been outscored by 44 points in the series. They're down 3-1. My big takeaway, having watched this series and watching the game tonight, is that the Heat just don't have enough talent, and that has basically showed the entire series. No Jimmy Butler, no Terry Rozier, of course. Do you agree that it's just that simple?
Yeah, it's not any more I was struggling to come up with stuff to talk about, a little inside baseball, inside basketball, I guess. Because there's no narrative here for the Heat. It really sucks that Jimmy Butler got hurt. I came on last pod and was saying, you're the expert on this, Wes, so tell me if I'm wrong here. Like, even like Terry Rozier could have made a dramatic difference. It's so clear they need one more ball handler. I mean, Duncan Robinson out there would be a lifeline right now. And you have Patty Mills, maybe 15 years past his prime, like somehow playing minutes in this series. And him and DeLon Wright tonight, The Athletic had this 51 combined minutes for those guys, 11 points. Like that's all you need to know. It's desperation. Erik Spoelstra is a genius. Even he cannot overcome this. The Celtics are, by net rating, one of the top 6 or 7 teams in the history of basketball, a total statistical profile of a champion. The Heat are a team that was deeply flawed and lost their best player and maybe their best guard. And it's hard to bridge that gap.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that Athletic stat there. It was the same thing I said on Locked On Heat after the game is, at some point it matters what the players are. I know that Eric Spoelstra has got this reputation for being this black magic wizard, able to cobble together lineups of anybody and field a competitive team. And there are definitely pockets of this series where they look competitive, right? But at you got a guy that was cut by the Wizards and a guy that was cut by the Hawks playing 50 minutes for you in an important playoff game, facing a potential 3-1 deficit. I mean, that tells you everything that you need to know about where it is that the Heat are. And I'm going to be honest, I don't even know that if Jimmy Butler were healthy and if Terry Rozier were healthy, obviously it would make a difference. Maybe this looks different, but maybe only in the terms of how much they were outscored by. I think the Celtics are just a far superior team. And I'm not going to be, I'm the last one to count the Heat out, but it feels like, okay, this is what happens. Like if you don't if you took care of business in the regular season, then you don't have to play in the play-in games and you're off that week. And instead, you have to play play-in games and Jimmy Butler gets hurt in the first one against Philadelphia. And and this is now 2 years in a row that they're in the play-in tournament. And of course, they got out of the play-in tournament last year and ended up going all with the NBA Finals. But when you're flirting with danger that long, you're gonna get bit at some point. And that happened in that play-in game when Kelly Oubre landed on Jimmy Butler's knee in a freak accident. And it sucks. And I know that there's a lot of reasons why the Heat were in the play-in tournament and not in the playoffs. And injuries was a big part of their season-long story here. But it just also feels like I'm going to go large sample size. And a 2-year sample of being a play-in team 2 years in a row, it feels like that you need to make changes and you need to level up your talent just threshold. Because the Celtics now, you've got Jason Tatum hitting another level, Jaylen Brown hitting another level. You've got Derek White hitting another level. The addition of Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. This is the rivalry that has defined the Eastern Conference over the past half decade, and that rival has just completely lapped you in talent. And so it just feels like something's got to give. I know the Heat have tried. They've tried getting Kevin Durant, tried getting Donovan Mitchell, tried getting Damian Lillard, and they've failed. But now it just sort of feels like those failures have really now caught up to them. And there's only so much that Eric Spoelstra and Heat culture can do, right? There's only so far that it could take them. And it feels like they've reached their limit now. Not to be too dramatic. I know, again, no Jimmy Butler, no Terry Rozier, but I don't know that just simply saying, you know what, chalk it up to injuries. It sucks. Just wasn't our year. Let's run it back next year. I don't know that that's the answer for them.
No, I don't think so. And you can bet on internal development in some areas. Obviously, I think Jaime Jaquez is going to be an awesome NBA player for years to come. Nikola Jovic, I didn't know a ton about him coming into the series. I've been incredibly impressed with him and his fearlessness shooting the basketball, how multifaceted he is. I think he's the guy there with the highest ceiling that if you're Miami and you could justify running it back, you're thinking he's going to make a big jump, but that's probably still a few more years away. Who's the guy for them? I mean, to me, Donovan Mitchell seems like the clearest name at this point because I don't think he's going to be a Knick. I don't think he particularly wants to be a Net. But then how much do you have to give up in that trade if you're Miami? And can Jimmy Butler still be the guy who is going to be like the alpha in 3 straight Eastern Conference series? We saw that last year. We've seen that the last few years. Does he still have that in him as he thoroughly enters his mid-30s?
It's a great question. Donovan Mitchell is the name that I know Heat fans are talking about and looking at, and everybody in the league expects him to probably get traded this summer. And if he's out there, if he's available, the Heat are going to call again. And Woj had that report the other day about how they're going to be looking for all-stars that could potentially be free agents soon within Bam Adebayo's age range. And I was like, Woj, just say Donovan Mitchell's name. I mean, we all know who you're talking about here. And so I do think that they're going to give chase there. Now, just because they try to do it doesn't mean they're going to do it. And that's the whole other thing here. You and I are very impressed with Nikola Jovic. I think the league is impressed with Jaime Jaquez Jr., and there's a lot of teams kicking themselves over not drafting him sooner before Miami did. But is that enough for a team like Cleveland to part with Donovan Mitchell? I mean, at some point, there might just be you're not a free agent, Donovan. You at least have another year under contract. Maybe we just run it back for a year because I don't know. The Cavs are not a team that wants to take a step back and rebuild. They kind of want to they want to try to take a step forward. And I think in trading Donovan Mitchell, if they do get to that point, they would still be trying to maybe improve the team and kind of create better fits around the roster and around their tentpole stars. So I don't know. I really don't know what the Heat do, and that kind of puts you in a tough spot if you're Miami. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves either right now because they're down 3-1. They'll play in Boston. The Celtics. Any Celtics thoughts on this series so far?
I mean,
just sort of feels like they've done what they've had to do.
Yeah, I mean, Derek White, extraordinary tonight. We should
Yeah.
note another great stat from The Athletic. Second most points in a playoff game in NBA history without a free throw, 38. Chuck Person had 39 back in, I think, 1991
Oh, wow.
was the number. So that's really cool. 6 threes in the first half, started just flushing the ball in the second half. And it's kind of a litmus for the Celtics talent that, right? You're like, oh yeah, this is the third guy. And some nights this is the fourth guy. And he's capable of doing this against Eric Spoelstra and that defense and that team and that culture, even missing all those guys. That's really impressive. And then the Kristaps Porzingis injury. I know, obviously the right calf, he missed, I think, 7 games earlier this season with a left calf injury. He tweeted out after the game, he's all good. He's going to be fine. Jason Tatum called him their most important player, I think in the last couple of weeks. And I'm almost prone to agreeing with that, just because he is a force amplifier for them. And that space, I'm thinking about it from someone who hosts Locked On Knicks, like as an example in that series, and how that's a feasible matchup for the Knicks with Porzingis out. And there are actually matchups you like, and you could throw Anunoby on one of Tatum or Brown, and you actually get to keep your amazing rim protectors around the rim instead of stationed out around the arc. You have Porzingis in there. Like there is just not an answer for that team in the Eastern Conference. I don't even know. I mean, who am I to bet against this version of the Knicks? But I don't know if there's a competitive series in the Eastern Conference if he's out there. So it's something to watch, but they have plenty of time and plenty of cushion right now.
Porzingis left the arena in a walking boot. So there's that. And so we'll see what ends up happening. Even if he doesn't have to play this next game, the Celtics should have enough to get this thing done in Boston. And then you give him a little bit of a break here, and hopefully he'd be okay for Boston in their second round series. We're not a great Jason Tatum series and not a great Jaylen Brown series. And I will say this, the Heat are going to lose this series. They've defended Boston really well. The number one offense in the league. They have defended them really well. And I do wonder whether or not Tibbs will look at what the Heat did, what Eric Spoelstra did, and said they were able to do that with DeLon Wright and Caleb Martin and limit Boston to 102 points tonight, even when you got 38 points from Derek White. And it's been in the low hundreds every game this series for the Celtics, despite the fact that they have the lead. Miami's problem is that they can't score with them. They can't even get up to 100. They keep scoring like 80-something points in these games. So I hesitate to say that it's a full-out blueprint on how to stop the Celtics, but I definitely expose, drop some hints on, okay, here's the best way to do it. You don't have to necessarily put Isaiah Hartenstein on Kristaps Porzingis if he's out there on the perimeter. You could put a wing on there, and he'll be fine, and that still lets you protect the rim a little bit with your big men. You can, there's things you could do with Jaylen Brown. There's things that still bother him, even though he's gotten better as a player this year. And so I don't know. I'll be interested to see what happens if and when these teams meet and how teams try to defend the Celtics, and if anybody learned anything from Spo in this first round series. But we'll get to the Thunder sweeping the Pelicans and what I think we need to reconsider, or why we need to reconsider their chances to win a title next year on Locked On NBA. Today's episode of Locked On NBA is brought to you by FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on the app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. All right, I've got 2 big questions that I want to ask you, Gavin. First one, OKC sweeps the Pelicans. They outscore the Pelicans by a playoff high 15.8 points per game. Okay, no other team outscored their opponent by more points per game than the Thunder outscored the Pelicans. Did the Thunder have the most impressive first-round performance in your mind?
It's hard to... Wow, it's a good question. It's hard to say so, just because this Pelicans team was just so completely defanged without Zion, and it's hard to tell how much of this was Oklahoma City is just an incredible defensive team, and they were top 5 defensive team in the NBA all year. So maybe I should lean towards that. But Brandon Ingram didn't seem fully healthy. It didn't seem like himself. Just 8 points, 2 of 14 shooting in this game 4. CJ McCollum's throwing up at the end of the third quarter. He had 20 points and 6 rebounds. He was fine. I can't quite get there. I look at what the Knicks have done against the Sixers. I look at the last 2 games with the Magic. I almost look at the Lakers in a loss, and maybe that's me. Maybe that's some East Coast bias. Maybe I'm going out of my way to not give Oklahoma City credit, but the Pelicans were just like, this version of them just didn't have a lot, and it still felt like Oklahoma City struggled to separate in some of these games. That being said, I'm also going to go the opposite way and say what I said last time I was on the show. I feel like a lot of people view them as a paper tiger coming into this playoff run. I picked them in 6. I thought the Pelicans were still going to push them a little bit. They totally took care of business. The combination of Lou Dort on the ball on Brandon Ingram, Chet Holmgren at the rim, just suffocated the Pelicans. I mean, the number of shots that Holmgren altered, like 0 blocks in this game. There were 3 times in the first half. Herb Jones put his head down, tried to get all the way to the rim, send a message every single time Holmgren there to ensure that he missed it. He was incredibly impressive. Shea, even if it wasn't his most efficient series, I love the way he was just comfortable against double teams and just different types of defenses. Even though this was his first time in the playoffs, never looked rushed, never looked flustered. And then Jalen Williams, big shot after big shot down the stretch of this game. It feels like they have all the components to make a run. No one's taking them seriously, apparently, including me, because I couldn't answer that question definitively. But they have a lot going for them, including Josh Giddey figuring out his 3-point shot.
To me, it was either Oklahoma City or Minnesota that had the most impressive first rounds. And I'd probably go Minnesota because the Pelicans were without Zion and the Thunder were supposed to do this. Maybe not supposed to sweep, but they're supposed to win this series. I think that this team needs to be taken seriously as a title contender. Like, I'm fully there now. And I say that only because you mentioned Shea. This is going to be the hardest. This was the hardest series for him. It's over. The Pelicans have all the wing defenders. All of them. Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, like all the reasons. They got big bodies in the middle, that like Jonas Valanciunas that could take away the basket, or at least put a big body in front of Shea. If there was a team designed to sort of defend Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, it was this Pelicans team, and they eliminated them in 4 games. And so the next series, and perhaps a series after that, or even the NBA Finals, like, there's not going to be a harder team just for Shea. I'm not saying that the teams are going to be better than, like, every team's going to be better than an injured, limping Pelicans team. But this matchup was particularly hard for Shea, and he didn't have a great series. And he's only going to get better as these playoffs go on. And if you get that with this version of Jalen Williams, you mentioned the Holmgren thing. I am so glad that the Thunder didn't make some weird shakeup trade in terms of trying to go get another big man to battle with Jokic. I love the fact that they're like, okay, let's just get to the playoffs. Let's figure out what our baseline is, and let's try to get teams to play our style. And if we could do that, then we're going to create an advantage. It's a little bit like those early Warriors teams that everybody was like, oh, you can't win this way. And they're like, well, watch us, you know? And so we don't know, obviously, what's going to happen with OKC here. But I love that they're doing it, and I love that they're trying it, and they're freaking terrifying. My takeaway always from every Thunder game is, oh my God, that team is terrifying. You think you got Gilgeous-Alexander bottled up? Here's Jalen Williams popping off in the 4th quarter. What are you going to do about it? Oh, you think you have a great wing play scorer? We're going to sick Lou Dort on him. Like, good luck. You mentioned the Holmgren stuff. This team is absolutely terrifying. I wouldn't want to be any team facing them. I still have the Nuggets. I still feel really good about it in the West. But to me, the Thunder are right there. And maybe it's Minnesota also. But I love this team, and yeah, I think that Shea's only going to get better. So everything we just saw from guys like Anthony Edwards and these other Jalen Brunson in the first round, we could be saying that about Shea Gilgeous-Alexander after a 2nd round series if he goes off. And if they do that, then the Thunder are even more terrifying. What's next for the Pelicans?
That's a good question. I don't know if the Pelicans know. I think they're in this terrible situation that's the same as the Clippers with Kawhi Leonard and the same as the Sixers with Joel Embiid. And you rightfully hear sirens going off outside my house because it's a team that is predicated around the health of someone who has never been healthy in the NBA, in Zion Williamson. And that's terrifying because every year you're just kind of crossing your fingers, you're crossing your pinky toes. And this was the healthiest season of his career, and he still wasn't healthy for the playoffs. And I think the really daunting thing about Zion, as compared to a Kawhi, as compared to an Embiid, the year you finally get him fully healthy, that's going to be his first ever playoff run. So how do you expect him to do it that year? And if it happens, how do you expect him to ever do it again? And yet they can't move off him because, I mean, coming off this injury, like, I don't think I mean, it is just too hard to get a guy that is that good. The version of him we saw against the Lakers, you could talk yourself into, all right, that's the makings, maybe a few more years of seasoning away from being the best player on a title team. So you kind of have to shuffle the deck chairs on hopefully a sturdier version of the Titanic. If I'm them, I'm fine moving off either Brandon Ingram or CJ McCollum this offseason. Like we've had years and years and years of numbers that they're really good with Zion and their supporting cast on the floor. With the healthy version of Ingram, they're really good with Ingram and their supporting cast on the floor. They're not that good with both of them on the floor. It's never been a clean fit. They've tried to make it work. You could still argue there's not enough sample size there. If they want to run it back for one more season, I don't think that's crazy at all, because it's just hard to trade a wing like Ingram that's multifaceted and a strong defender and get back something better. But at this point, Zion's still young enough. You have enough of a timeline there. You have the Lakers picks. I wouldn't mind doing it and then going all in on someone else later on. But what's your take on that? Because there just isn't an obvious direction for them.
You got to trade Brandon Ingram. You got to at least explore the CJ McCollum deal. I don't really know what you get for McCollum in today's NBA. I don't know what team is out there that's dying to pay McCollum that much money at that age and bring him on. But he's a good leader. He's a good locker room guy. Maybe that gets you some traction in some trade talks. But the Brandon Ingram thing is done. Like, that's over. And I was maybe the last one hanging on. I'm like, you know what? You don't just trade good talent because the quote unquote fit isn't right. You got to let them have a chance to figure it out. Well, they had the chance to figure it out this year, and they didn't. So now it's time to move on. And also, Trey Murphy and Herb Jones are just better players. They're just better fits next to Zion. They're more valuable players for this roster, and you've got to find a way to get them more minutes and make them, tentpole cornerstone pieces of whatever it is that you're building here. So I think you need to explore trading Brandon Ingram. I think you could look for a guy, maybe like, would you call Atlanta about Trae Young? Get like maybe the best lob thrower in the league, throwing lobs to Zion Williamson. Like, would you at least explore it? I don't hate it. I don't hate it for the Pelicans. It's, some dicey risk there, but I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think you also have to move off Valanciunas if you're thinking about anything like that, because there's, to your point, they have every wing defender, right? I mean, especially if Dyson Daniels ever develops a jump shot, they have the makeup to be terrifying defensively, and they just give teams places to attack right now. And that was their issue this whole series, right? Because with Larry Nance on the floor, I mean, Chet just swallowed him, but he was this flexible, versatile piece defensively that you need against a team that has 5 guys who can pass, dribble, and shoot, like the Thunder. And then this game, they were like, all right, we just need the offense. We got to go with Jonas. They still don't even get to 90 points. He has some good moments on offense, bullying Chet, a disaster for the most part defensively. If they can find a versatile rim protector, I think the year that Zion's healthy, they're going to have the infrastructure to give anyone in the league trouble. I kind of like the idea of getting Trae, but you almost like, if you could somehow make that a 2-for-1 deal and get Trae and Clint Capella back, or Trae and Onyeka Okongwu back. I'm really interested in if there's a world where it's Brandon Ingram, those Lakers picks, and I don't know, 1 or 2 of their own picks. Like, I think there's something there.
Maybe one of those young guys that they got on the roster or something like that. Maybe a Dyson Daniels is involved in that trade. Yeah, we'll see. We got a whole offseason to figure it out. For now, thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Everydayers, make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts.